Olá, seja bem-vindo ao Campo Diplomático, espaço dedicado às relações do Brasil com o mundo. Eu sou Catiúcia Sotomayor e hoje converso com o embaixador da Irlanda no Brasil, Sean Roy. O embaixador já exerceu funções diplomáticas no Vietnã, em Moçambique e Uganda. Também já serviu no Sudão, com formação e mestrado em agricultura. Foi embaixador na Nigéria, em Gana, Côte d'Ivoire e Senegal. Atualmente também é embaixador acreditado para Guiana, Suriname e CARICOM, bloco formado por 15 países e 5 territórios da região caribenha. Está no Brasil desde 2018. Welcome, Your Excellence. Thank you very much for your presence.
And thank you very much, Katiuska, for inviting me along this morning.
It's really interesting that we are talking here now because Ireland is 100 times smaller than Brazil, but it's really important. Agribusiness is really important there too, right?
Yes, I mean, our history is agriculture. And, you know, when we became an independent country 100 years ago, up until the 1950s and early 1960s, we were exporting all of our livestock live to Britain. And it was very obvious that there was a very small margin for our farmers. We realized that we had to start processing in our country to bring that value added to Ireland. So the agriculture has changed a lot. We were primary producers, now we're secondary producers. We're moving up the food chain. And I bring this up because the fact that we're an island and the whole island of Ireland is just a little bit less than 101 times smaller than Brazil, we don't have the option to expand. And I think, you know, so we have to intensify. And actually we're taking land out of production, putting it into conservation, into forestry, and that brings other challenges. But all challenges should be opportunities.
But another really interesting thing that we should mention here is that even though you're the ambassador of the country, you are also a farmer, right?
Yes, my grandparents and when I was a small boy, we used to go to their farm. And even when I was a teenager, we spent every weekend with them. My grandparents lived until they were in their 90s. So the farm skipped a generation. My father didn't go back to live there, but now I live on that farm. And it's a small farm in Brazil. It's 16 hectares, but it's home. And we have been there for probably 200 years. And it's in my blood.
And you told me that something that you didn't have opportunity to do because of the pandemic since you got here is to visit a Brazilian farm. What do you think it will be when you can do that?
I think the first thing that will really strike me is the scale, the size, because I believe some of the farms here are very large. I haven't been to a farm, but on a visit to Porto Alegre with other EU ambassadors, we met with the Agricultural Producers Group. And they were mostly men, but not all, gauchos, and very proud of their heritage, very proud to be farmers, and very concerned that they had a very good and strong global reputation as producers of safe food. And I was very stimulated by that. And it was just unfortunate that we could not add another day and travel to those farms because, you know, I studied agriculture so I would not end up working in an office. And now I'm wearing a suit every day. And I think you really see me as a true person when I can get into my boots and jeans and go out and walk on the ground.
That's amazing. Now let's talk about the role of agribusiness in Ireland, because you told me that, of course, you have this difficult to expand because of the size of the land. And how are you trying to do that then? And let's talk about the importance of the sector, the exports, the imports.
There's a number of issues. We are part of the European Union, so we have access to that very large market. And but, you know, you need to protect your rural areas. You need to have agriculture. You need to keep farmers in those areas. So I think every country during a certain period, there's a migration to the cities. And I think in Ireland, most people have heritage from the countryside. So you have to find a way to make agriculture appealing to young people. And you have to think of it as a business. I think in my grandfather's time, it was hard labor with small margins. Now it's a very profitable business if you do it right. And it's an industry that if you don't do it right, you get penalized. For example, I know in our milk industry, everything is tested 3 times between the cow and between the processing plant. And if there's any contamination, any infection in the milk, it's rejected. So the quality of the production has to meet business standards and health and safety standards. So, I mean, those are all aspects, but I suppose the other thing that we haven't discussed before is most of our farms are family farms. The average size is 32 hectares. That would not be a viable farm, perhaps, in Brazil. But those farms were parts originally of cooperatives, and then those cooperatives became private companies, and then they became marketing companies. And we still have shareholders that are the small farmers at the top level in our agribusiness. And I think that's a very important connection to keep the full cycle running.
So talking about connection, you mentioned that it's important that because you have family farmers, internet, science, technology, innovation, that's something that you should try and achieve, because that's the way you can expand, right?
You know, I think a lot of people were attracted to live in the cities because of new opportunities, technology. But now all these services are available in our homes. We can watch any football match from anywhere in the world on our computer. So a lot of those incentives are not real anymore. Technology has brought the world into everybody's bedroom, everybody's living room. And, you know, I think we're really seeing after the pandemic that because we've had to pause, people are starting to think about the quality of life. Where do I want to be in 10 years' time? Where do I want my children to grow up? And we're seeing an increase in the price of rural houses because people want to move out of the cities. They can work from home. And now we have a right to work from home. It's going to be one of the results that will come out of the pandemic. Not 100% of the time, but there will be a new life balance. And we will see more people working and living on farms. Maybe not full-time farmers, but they will have the opportunity to do what they love, to farm, and to earn an income possibly online as well. And that is hugely exciting because that also opens up what has been a male-dominated career to women in a way that hasn't happened before. And I think that's very exciting.
And that also means that, for example, people are, because of the pandemic, the fact that they are going back to the farm, they are choosing products with more quality. And you were talking about the quality of your produces, the dairy. And do you think that because of that, maybe the family farmers are going to improve, grow because of this necessity of the consumer today of quality?
I think, I mean, and something I've noticed in Brasilia, we have farmers markets on Saturday morning where small producers come in with their artisanal goods, their honey, their cured meats, their cheese. And of course, we really like to go there and look around and support them. And I think small farmers have to focus on quality because you cannot produce the same as the massive industrial size farms because you just cannot make it work. So you have to have something that's different. Either it has a higher quality or different ingredients, or you make a type of cheese with a spice in it or something like that. So this type of innovation is very stimulating. And, you know, You know it when you go to the farmer's market and somebody is sold out because their product is really valued and it's already gone. And if you don't get there early, you've missed it. So I think we're seeing a lot of this.
And do you think, is there a possibility that we work together? Because there's no cooperation between Brazil and Ireland in that matter, right? But you are trying together.
For sure. I mean, we have had many discussions around the area of innovation, more in science and technology, and I've met with Minister Marco Pontes on some of these ideas. But unfortunately, with the pandemic, it's been difficult to maintain momentum because I had invited the minister to Ireland, and we will continue to do that. We will continue to look at those opportunities. But there are areas. But before you can find areas to cooperate, you need to know more about each other. And I think we're certainly on that track. And even participating in this program and creating an opportunity for lots of people to hear about Ireland is an important step in that.
That's perfect. And because of that, let's talk about the relations between Brazil and Ireland when we talk about imports and exports. Do we buy something from you? You buy something from us? What is our relation?
So we have relations in lots of different ways, and they're all positive. And you have a very active ambassador in Dublin, Marcel Beato. He has just arrived, but he is full of ideas, and that's something that we can work on together. We have a large Brazilian population in Ireland. We estimate about 40,000 people, and the English language students alone was 16,000 students a year going to Ireland. So there's a lot of, if I use the agricultural expression, cross-fertilization in our cultures, in our interests, but of course also in romances. And we're finding a lot of Irish and Brazilian people becoming partners and traveling to both countries. But on the trade side, the value in 2020 was about 135 million euro. We are buying mostly corn and I have to check my notes in a second. But anyway,
no problem at all. You can tell me that.
In Ireland, but we're importing a lot of dairy milk powder because we export 90% of our milk powder from Ireland. And
the Baileys too, right?
Yes, I think because we are grass-fed and we have a lot of rain and a very easy temperate climate, we have very good quality milk and very high fat content. So Baileys, Irish cream, which I find in every corner of the world, that is all made in one factory and it's all used with Irish cream.
And when we talk about potato, for example, you told me that instead of rice, because here in Brazil, we are always eating rice and beans, that's not something that is common there, right? You don't eat rice as much as we do.
No, I think historically, I mean, it's wonderful. The potato came from this part of the world. And in the 1840s, we had a very large potato famine in Ireland. It was due to a blight, but it was also due to overpopulation of our island. We were about 8 million people, and a lot of them were subsistence farmers on very small areas. So if you want to feed a family with enough food that you can grow for the winter, and you only have maybe 1/4 of a hectare of land, you have to grow potatoes because there is nothing else that creates the bulk in that area. And also the climate, it's wet and cold. It's okay for potatoes. But
and it also tastes good, right?
Oh, for me, it is still even strange to take a picanha steak with rice. I will always have potatoes. That's just the way we are. But now, of course, young people are diversifying. We're eating more pasta. We're eating more rice. Of course, it's easier to cook as well. So we're actually having to tell our young people to eat more potatoes. And I remember when I was in Nigeria, one minister said to me, because he was a medical doctor, that he lived for 1 year in Ireland, and he said the people were so poor there, they didn't have rice, only potatoes. And I said, Minister, that was our choice.
Another thing that you told me is that because of the fact that we're blending our cultures, there are a lot of Brazilians living there, and now you have Brazilian rice and beans and feijoada. So it's becoming really more common, right?
Yes, and of course, I mean, with the internet, there's nothing that you cannot learn. So we have Brazilian restaurants in Ireland, and they're fantastic because, you know, Brazilian people always have energy. They become animated when they're eating. There's an atmosphere. It's wonderful, and it's, you know, when I was home the last time, I met many Brazilian people in different places, and I gave them one of these little pins, and that's our friendship. But it's wonderful to see that blending of our interests, including our cuisine and our food.
And can we share some examples, for example, of public policies or something that your country has that we can replicate here in Brazil?
I can certainly share what we do, but I'm not an expert on what happens here in Brazil. So please take this as an example rather than as advice. But our food policy is something that we involve everybody as stakeholders. So, for example, our new food policy on 2030 is online now, and we're taking contributions from the public. And we have a forum which is chaired by the minister, but we have all the different stakeholders, the agribusiness, the farmers groups, and they're all consulted. So we work together. So we don't impose policies from the top down, because that doesn't work. We have to be all part of the team. We make the decisions together. Sometimes we make tough decisions together, but we have that ownership. And, you know, when farmers feel the Department of Agriculture is working in their best interests, you have a very positive relationship. And that's something that's very highly valued in our country. And maybe if I can just add to that, I mean, because we have some challenges. We have to deal with climate change. We have to deal with safer production, the environment, and these changes will cost the farmers.
That's what I was going to ask about sustainability and how you work with that, the fact that we have the climate change and all of the challenges that it brings to our agribusiness.
I think the most important thing is to be transparent and to have an open discussion about this. Because what we don't want is the government to make decisions and impose them on farmers, because that will be counterproductive and it will be difficult. But farmers have to be part of that journey. We have a discussion about reducing the size of our herd, of our animals, to reduce the methane content. The methane emissions, that's a very live discussion. It's sensitive, it's difficult, because no farmer wants to reduce the number of animals. But maybe there are different ways that we can mitigate the emissions through our production cycle. And those are discussions that are taking place. We are putting more land on my small piece of land. 15 years ago, I planted 1,500 trees. They're all broadleaf trees. That area is out of production, but I felt because of my job, I'm producing a carbon footprint. I'm flying around the world. So let me do something personally to offset that. And, you know, on the positive side, we're getting wildlife back into the area. I think it's a very positive thing here in Brasilia that there's so many conserved areas within the city. I think this is something that we don't give enough credit to, but, you know, conservation is something that's here and possibly not, you don't give yourself enough credit for it. But, you know, there's a lot of parks here that are very very nice places to visit when you have the time, especially at the weekend, and they provide very important habitat for wildlife.
And what about the pandemic? How did it affect the situation of the farmers and your country in this sector?
Well, I think the first thing is that farmers are essential workers, so their movement was not restricted during the lockdown. But, you know, they're also people who were isolated and afraid. You know, if you live on a farm and you become sick, it's a little more difficult to get to the hospital than if you're in the city. So my experience from farmers at home is that they have been especially sensitive because they also deal with diseases. They have livestock, they know they have animals that die, so they have a much more natural understanding of what a pandemic is, you know, because we have animal diseases, tuberculosis, brucellosis, historically. So a farmer knows the importance of distancing, of good hygiene measures. But I think also when people have been in lockdown, they've been more selective about what they eat because they can't go to the supermarket. They have to order things. There's a lot more carry-outs, like we have here also in Brazil. And there's choice. And, you know, we ran out of eggs and flour because everybody started to bake at home, to make bread, to do things that they always wanted to do but never made time. And the pandemic changed those things. So I think there's a big increase in demand for organic food. People are paying more for better quality. And that has to be a good opportunity for farmers.
So let's talk about opportunities. What about the opportunities to the Brazilian producers? How can we access your market?
Trading is about negotiating. It has to benefit both sides. And at the highest level, the EU-Mercosur discussions are underway. I'm not going to discuss any of that, but I mean, that will be decided at the political level. But I think that
would be good, right?
It has to be good for everybody. I mean, a deal is about being good for everybody, but nobody wins everything because that's not what trade agreements are about. So I think let's see what happens, but there's a positive momentum. There are some issues, but they're being discussed, and that will create opportunities going both ways.
Today we have investors there.
Just a couple of examples of Irish investors that are in Brazil. The Kerry Group is here, and the Kerry Group is very diversified, but they focus on food ingredients and on flavouring. So, for example, I think if you like with your coffee a little bit of vanilla or another additive,
kind of
you will find that this is made by the Kerry Group. A lot of the sugar here is packaged by the Kerry Group.
Does it taste like Baileys? No?
I like Café Puro, so I'm not the one to ask. But of course, I mean, part of it is they are investigating the flavors that people like in natural food and trying to put that into condiments and into sauces so that you can find something that's similar to what your mother made at home that you can have in a jar here. But Kerry have been here since 1997. So they're a very big investor in Brazil, and they're in a number of parts of the country. I've been to their headquarters in Campinas, and I've also been to their plant in Manaus. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to travel to many other places. Another investor is Bimeda. They're involved in veterinary services and drugs, and they've been here for a long time, and they've recently announced an expansion in their investment. So these are two. We have another company working with, let me just check their name, BioAtlantis. They are using seaweed extracts to, especially for dryland areas, to build plant resistance and to make them more drought resistant. And this is an organic process. And then perhaps the last one is Cubic Telecom, who are connecting your large farms to satellites through internet providers so that the farmers, while they're harvesting, and I have seen this myself with the iPad, they have the real information. so they can get the maximum from their yield. So we have investments that are diversified. They're at all the different parts of the food chain.
So let's hope we can increase this partnership and these investments with the agreement with Mercosur, right? Now, let's talk a little bit about your vision about Brazil.
You know what? I mean, Brazil is many countries, really, especially in agriculture. The agriculture in the south of the country, in the Cerrado, in the northeast, and in the Amazon. You know this. They're all very different opportunities. But I mean, when I studied at postgraduate level, the first Brazilian I ever met is now working in MAPA, Mauricio Oliveira. And I hope you're watching this, Mauricio. But we studied together, and he invited me to Brazil, and then we lost contact. Because, of course, 25 years ago, we did not have email addresses. And as you have said, I've been all over the world. But I arrived in December 2018, and Vania it took a little bit of time to find him, but they say there are many Oliveiras in Brazil, but we found him, and he's working in MAPA, in soil conservation. And we met for the first time in 25 years at St. Patrick's Day in my house. And that was a real highlight for me. And my wife, she never knew him before, and I never knew his wife.
That's really amazing. Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador, for your time.
And thank you very much for inviting me on today. And I hope if this will stimulate some interest in what we've discussed, and we can always be contacted through our website. Thank you very much.
No Campo Diplomático de hoje, nós falamos sobre as relações comerciais do Brasil com a Irlanda e a cooperação no agronegócio. Você pode rever este programa e também outras entrevistas no nosso canal no YouTube. Aproveite para seguir a gente nas redes sociais, @AgroMaisTV. Continue com a programação do AgroMais, seu canal voltado para o agronegócio 24 horas. Obrigada pela companhia. A gente se vê.